Today's guest is Kristin Secor, and she is amazing. She was born with a rare form of muscular dystrophy, which affects her mobility, balance, strength, endurance, and breathing, and she uses a full-time ventilator. And she decided to use her disability and the challenges that it has presented to help others by first becoming a mental health counselor and then as a wheelchair accessible travel blogger, which is so awesome. Her goals are to inspire people to travel to destinations they never thought possible, provide valuable accessibility, information, and resources to make planning and accessible travel easier, and to advocate for more accessible travel opportunities. So welcome, Kristin.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. I'm so excited to have you on here. So I love to travel, and I think it's so amazing that your disabilities are not disabilities for you, right? You've overcome that with traveling. You're finding ways to make it accessible, and I think that's beautiful.
I'm doing my best. There's always challenges when traveling, even if you're able-bodied. So, you know, we all have different challenges. I think having a mobility challenge has a little extra obstacles you've got to find a way to overcome, but there are ways to overcome them, and that's one of the reasons why I'm advocating for more accessible travel opportunities as well. It's just so that more people can enjoy what we love so much.
Yeah, that's so awesome. You are definitely a great example of living greater. So when did you start traveling?
So I've always had family vacations, you know, when I was younger, but then I started traveling internationally right out of grad school in about 2005. I took my first trip to England and Scotland and spent about 2 weeks there, and it was just, I loved it. I loved seeing all the history, the culture. So I was hooked after that. And I've just been internationally traveling ever since. I still do domestic travel, but I also absolutely love international travel as well.
Oh yes, yeah. Once you start traveling, there's a bug.
Yeah.
You can't stop, right? So that's so awesome. So what are some of your favorite places that you've gone?
Oh, that's such a hard one because I always try to find something positive out of each trip. You know, there's always something special. But I think my top two places at the moment are Italy, because I've always wanted to go to Italy. And then when I went there, it met like all my expectations. You know how sometimes where you have wanted something so long, you build it up in your head, you know, but that didn't happen with Italy. It just met all my expectations. And I literally cried the day I had to leave because I was having such a blast. I didn't want to go home. So that would be one of my favorite destinations. I think the other one was Antarctica. I just got back there. I visited there last month. And so Antarctica was incredible, just very peaceful, lots of wildlife, just wonderful.
So as someone with disabilities, and you're in a wheelchair, correct? So how is that for Antarctica? I mean, is it a cruise or how does that work?
So yeah, there's a couple different ways you can travel to Antarctica. I did a cruise, and there's two type of cruises. You can do an expedition cruise where you actually get out on the continent, and, you know, and take little zodiacs ashore. Those really aren't accessible. So I did what's called a sail by cruise. So they go to the continent, but you just sail by into some of the bays and stuff, and you don't actually set a foot on the continent. So for me, that was the best option with accessibility. They're the larger cruise ships, like the popular name brands, so they all have accessible rooms, they have accessible pathways around the ship. And even though I didn't get to actually like put a wheel on the continent, it was still incredible. And I have no regrets.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Just, I mean, for anybody to go to Antarctica and just be down there. How was the weather for you?
So I'm from upstate New York.
Okay.
And so I was comparing weather, and it was actually warmer in Antarctica than it was at some times in upstate New York. So, you know, it was like low 30s. So still chilly. I mean, still, you know, what we would consider winter weather in New York, but since it was their summer, it was probably the most pleasant weather you're going to get in Antarctica. I mean, you just layer, you plan accordingly, and honestly, the excitement of seeing all the wildlife, sometimes you forget how cold it is, and you're just like, oh my God, there's penguins or there's a whale, and so you get so distracted by all the cool stuff that's not really that bad.
Yeah. That is so amazing. And to see those animals in their habitat.
Yeah.
What an incredible experience. So what with you got a master's degree, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So has that come into play, or how has that come into play with your travel?
So actually the master's degree was in counseling, and that's, I was a mental health counselor for 11 years. More what has come into play, and I wouldn't have known it at the time. When I was an undergraduate, I knew I was going to major in psychology, but everyone has to take English 101 in college. So I happened to have the chair of the English department as my professor. And what she did was anytime you wrote a paper, you had like a one-on-one review session. So she could give you feedback on becoming a better writer and things like that. And there was a time when she's like, Kristin, have you ever thought of a double major? And I was like, oh my goodness, that's a lot of work. She's like, all right, well, maybe at least consider a minor in it. So that's what I ended up doing. I could see the benefit of, learning that writing and information design kind of information, no matter what profession you go into. So at the time, I decided to minor in it. And it really, it taught you different styles of writing, different ways of presenting information so that visually it wasn't overwhelming, that you could, easily take it in. And so that has played a huge role in my blogging career because I kind of already have that background. I've really honed some of my writing skills. And of course, writing for a blog is a little different than like writing as like a journalist or anything, because you've got to anticipate what people want to know, right? You've got to anticipate what they're asking, and you write to answer those questions, but it's kind of a balance of finding your own voice and answering people's needs and really presenting that in a way where people are going to be able to take that in visually and, not have it be completely overwhelming. So that has played a huge part. And luckily, I mean, I had no idea at the time what it was going to lead to, but it was just kind of, a nice little gift.
That's awesome. That's great. You took your teacher's advice and did that. It was a blessing for you. So that's so great. And she has a great website. Do you want to tell your website now? And we'll also put it in the show notes.
Sure. It's worldonwheelsblog.com. And you can read all about where I've traveled, but also tips for, so you can plan your own accessible vacations. I cover a lot of different ways of traveling and things like that. You can also sign up for my newsletter where I'll give you weekly accessible travel tips and keep you up to date on all the latest news and information.
That's awesome. So what are some, you wrote, which I loved, about living greater. And you said, one thing that being disabled has taught me is that life is unpredictable and can change at any time without notice. That's why it is so important to pursue your dreams and the things you're passionate about. Life is short and no one knows how much time they have on this earth. As a result, you want to not only pursue your love of travel while you still can, but try and make the world a little bit a better place in the process. And how do you feel that's going for you? Like, how are you being able to share that love? And I think you're so right that life is short for anyone. You never know, right? When the next day, what it might bring. So, and you've definitely been learning and living with your passion. So how has that been able to help those around you that you've seen?
Luckily I get feedback from some of my readers of they've always wanted to go here. They never thought it was accessible, or they didn't think they could, or, they're worried about it, because they're worried about their wheelchair being broken on an airplane, or they're worried about, what it's going to be like. So when I give them that information, and when people reach out to email me personally, I do my best to personally respond and give answer the questions that they have. And so one example is I went to Hawaii last year and I found out you can do an accessible helicopter ride, right? So I wrote all about that on my blog, and I had a woman email me and said, I've always wanted to go to Hawaii. I'm planning my trip. I never thought I could do a helicopter ride. How awesome. I'm so excited. And it's so rewarding to hear that, because that's, that's the goal of the website, right? Is to really help people live out their dreams and go to places that they've always wanted to go and have really awesome experiences. So it's really rewarding hearing that, and just being able to travel myself. So I've always been disabled. I was, like you said, I was born with it. But muscular dystrophy is a progressive illness. So when I was younger, I was more able-bodied than I am now. And in 2017, I got really, really sick with pneumonia. I was hospitalized for about 6 weeks. They weren't sure if I was going to survive, because my lung had collapsed and there was just a lot of stuff going on. And at that point, I thought I might never travel again, right? And so you start looking back and you think about the last trip you took, and is that the trip you would have taken had you known it was going to be the last one, right? And you really think about what's important, how do you adapt, right? So if I couldn't travel internationally, maybe I'd focus more on domestic travel. And that's what I did initially, to kind of ease back into things and see what my new abilities were and what I would struggle with. And then when my health stabilized, and I basically begged my doctor, hey, can I travel abroad again? And she's a traveler, so luckily she totally understood. And she's like, okay. And then COVID hit, and you're like, well, crap, like I had all these big plans. So life always throws you curveballs. But it's really about, okay, now that it's like a huge reminder, you never know what tomorrow's gonna bring. How do I live my life doing what I love and kind of making the most out of it, being grateful for that, not taking really anything for granted, just trying to be in the moment and present. And how do I share that with others so that others can have that same experience, right? So I don't want to be a Debbie Downer of, life's gonna, be horrible and doom and gloom, but you also want to say, hey, you don't know. So, take that risk, go travel, go to that place you've always wanted to go to, because you just don't know what tomorrow's going to bring.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing that. And may I ask, how long have you been on the ventilator? Like how long have you had to?
So there's really 2 stages to that. I was on a ventilator as a child. In about 3rd grade, when I was about 9 years old, I had a very similar experience to what happened in 2017. I had pneumonia, my lung collapsed. That's when they really realized, hey, your muscular dystrophy is affecting your breathing muscles and you're not breathing very well. So we're gonna have to put in a trach. We're gonna have to put you on a ventilator. At that point, I was only on the vent at night. I had the trach all the time, but I would cap it off during the day, and the ventilator was only at night. And then as technology improved, they put me on a BiPAP machine instead of a ventilator. And then I was able to have the trach removed, and that's how I was able to go away to college, and to live on my own. And then when I got sick again in 2017, they tried to intubate me to help clear out my lungs, and they realized, hey, we can't do that because the way that you were trached as a kid changed the structure of your esophagus. So they couldn't intubate me. So they had to do another trach. And because I had several lung issues in 2017, not only the pneumonia, but then later in the year, I had like a leak in my lung. So they had to put a chest tube in, and the surgery they had to do to rectify that situation actually made it harder for me to breathe, for my lungs to move. So that's when I went on the vent full time. It was after that surgery, just because I don't have the strength in my breathing muscles to be able to take in a nice deep breath or to exhale completely. And that's really what the ventilator helps me do, is just to take in a deeper breath so I'm getting enough air, and then to help me exhale.
That's amazing. And that hasn't stopped you. You just like you said, you just figured out what you could do and work around it and go. So that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you're presented with a challenge, you have 2 options, right? You can just kind of sit there and say, woe is me, and and really let it paralyze your life, right? Or even say, hey, I'm not okay with this. I still have a life to lead. And, yes, this is an extra challenge, but I'm going to try to problem solve and figure out what my limits are and my abilities and make the most out of it, despite what my challenges are.
Yeah, I think that can go for anything, mental challenges, physical challenges, yeah, whatever they might be. That you're amazing. So what are some places that you haven't gone that you still want to go to?
So my goal is to visit all 7 continents, and I've done 4 so far. So I have 3 more to go. So next year I'm going to Africa. I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited about Australia and Asia. Those are the 3 I have yet to visit. So I'm really excited about those places. I'm a huge animal lover, so like I really want to experience wildlife in their natural habitat, right? And really see and just get the most out of that. And so I'm really excited about those places. But I'm also excited about like just challenging myself to find out what is accessible. Like, if you can think of the craziest place that most people would say, oh, there's no way a wheelchair user could go to that. I want to find a way to make that happen, like Machu Picchu and, like all these amazing places that people don't always associate with being wheelchair friendly. I want to say, yeah, I'm going to find a way to do it, and I'm going to share how other people can do it too.
That's awesome. You're a trailblazer. That's great. So have you been to Machu Picchu then?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. So that's on.
I've been doing research on that. So there are accessible travel companies that will take you to Machu Picchu. They use specialized wheelchairs. So it's called like a Gillette wheelchair. So this wheelchair has 1 wheel, and then you have someone in the back of the wheelchair and someone in the front that helps balance it. But only having that 1 wheel, it's a lot easier to get over uneven and rough terrain. So it makes it a little more possible.
Okay. And definitely take 2 trusted individuals with you, right?
Well, sometimes the company provides the individuals because they're used to how the wheelchair works. They know the area. So it depends on the company you use. But a lot of them provide those people for you.
Okay. Which is awesome. They'll be used to the terrain themselves as well. So that's perfect. Yeah. That's great. Well, this has been so awesome to have you on. Do you have anything else you wanted to share with the listeners?
So I think just challenge yourself. I mean, one of the best ways to really grow and live life to the fullest is to always push that comfort zone you have, to like say, okay, this may be a little anxiety provoking, or it may be, a little uncomfortable, but once you do it, it gives you so much more confidence as an individual. Hey, I did that. I can handle this. What else can I do? And it keeps you wanting to try more and do more. And that's one of the best ways of living life to its fullest, is always challenging yourself and putting yourself out there. Yes, there's a risk for failure, and failure is going to naturally happen as part of the process. But when you realize, hey, I can bounce back from that, or I can figure out as I'm failing what needs to change, or what do I need to do differently, again, that's just going to add to your confidence, and it's going to be so much of a great experience. And you're just gonna have kind of like an adrenaline rush, like a high of, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I was able to do that, and really see what else. At that point, the world's the limit, right? You can really push yourself to do almost anything.
That's awesome. That's so beautiful. And I want to ask one more question is, do you do group trips where you have other people that go with you?
So it's funny you should ask that. That is something I am currently working on. I'm hoping to make a big announcement in the next couple weeks about that, because one of the challenges in accessible travel, of course, is finances. Accessible travel is at least twice the cost of traditional travel, and oftentimes it's more. And with people with disabilities, often have like a fixed income or, a very budget conscious. So one of my goals was to start organizing small group tours that are fully accessible so that sharing that cost of what would maybe be originally a private tour and be out of someone's reach is now more affordable and maybe now more open to other people. It also takes the stress out of trying to figure out what's accessible, what I can do, because that'll already be done for you. So I'm really working on that. Like I said, within the next, I would say 2 to 3 weeks, I'm hoping to have the details finalized for my first group trip next year. So if you're interested in that, make sure to subscribe to my newsletter, because those will be the first people that hear about it. You'll have the first opportunity to sign up. But I'm really hoping to do some really cool trips.
That is so exciting. That is great. So can you tell everybody your website again?
Yes, it is worldonwheelsblog.com. And like I said, there's a lot of information there already. I keep adding to it. I try to post a new post each week. And I've got a lot to write about from my trip to Antarctica. But I also have, like I said, the news coming about the small group tours and stuff like that. And I have a whole list of accessible resources of companies I personally use that I feel like I can recommend. So if you are planning your own trip as an individual and kind of take some of the legwork out of it for you, you can go to that accessible resources page and that accessible tour provider page and look to see where you want to go and what companies offer services there, and kind of connect with them and read some of their posts of what's possible. So I'm hoping it's a really good resource for people.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kristin. You are an incredible person. I appreciate your example.
Thank you so much.